Wow, Biden's talking about a ceasefire deal for Israel. Mikey's got some updates on this, but as we go into the ceasefire, something to know that's been super hotly debated and very contentious is, can there actually be peace between Israel and Palestine? We've had a two-state solution on and off since about 1947 when the United Nations first instituted the partition plan. Unfortunately, since then, there have been periods of Israeli occupation and control of Palestine, talk about annexing the West Bank and Gaza. There have, of course, been attacks that have motivated these, but attacks on both directions. Is there actually a hope for peace and a future two-state solution? Mikey, what's the ceasefire talk? And then we can start thinking about the two-state solution.
Yeah, there's definitely a little bit of speculation involved here. So first of all, it's Joe Biden that says that a ceasefire is possible as early as this week. And as of Tuesday, February 27th, the United States is with Egypt and Qatar talking about a ceasefire deal, trying to broker a deal for 6 weeks. And this would be in exchange for some prisoners of war getting released, like hostages in Palestine, which it's estimated roughly 130 are still in Gaza at this point. But Israel expects about a quarter of them to have been deceased at this point.
Oh, that's terrible. One thing too is first of all, just the fact that, I mean, how some of these hostages were probably taken were probably pretty severely injured. So I wonder how much suffering there was at the beginning. It's just terrible to think about that situation. The other thing to think about too was just everybody who's trying to flee, like Gaza. Egypt's like, they've got their military at the border, like, no, don't come in. So these people have to go somewhere. I feel so bad for even just the Palestinians, the innocent Palestinians who are like, where do I go? Where's my home supposed to be? And that's where on the flip side, you have Israelis who are like, well, we need a home too. Where is a Jewish state? This is the only one. And so it's so interesting because you've really got, the Hamas solution is one state solution. No Israel, just Hamas. The Israeli solution right now, at least driven by the further right-wing parties, is just Israel. Will control and oversee everything. But you had mentioned there's talk about maybe a revised Palestinian leadership, huh?
Yeah, so the Prime Minister, Mohammed Shtayyeh, I think, he and his government have submitted their resignation to the Palestinian president. And so the Palestinian Authority has been seen as corrupt, funny enough, both by like the United States and the West and Palestinians themselves, but often for kind of different reasons. Like, for example, the Palestinians think that the PA hasn't been doing enough to help them against Israel, not just during this conflict since October, but just in the past in general.
Well, yeah, probably also just managing Hamas. Like, you kind of have to manage Hamas and prevent this kind of stuff from happening because it's just like self-destruction that you just invited. So you could almost suggest that the failure of the existing Palestinian government helped create or perpetuate the attack that Hamas essentially committed on October 7th.
Yeah, I think they've strengthened Hamas because this was the party that would have been in charge of Gaza as well up until the early 2000s when Hamas took over. So realistically, the Palestinian Authority is only in charge of West Bank at this point. But so they've dismantled, so to speak, their entire government. And there's talk, obviously, Israel's solution is, hey, we got this. We're going to watch over all of Palestine.
We'll take all this land.
And then the Palestinian solution is, no, we want, obviously, our own form of government. And that's what the United States wants, too, is a two-state solution.
Right.
So it's going to be a sort of revitalized Palestinian Authority is what we're looking at.
And that's where the question, I think, comes of, like, can you ever actually have peace? Because you had this in 1967, you had the 6 Days War. I was posting about this over at eHack.com a little bit. And here you had essentially millions of Palestinians under direct Israeli control, which that control, where Palestinians had fewer rights than Israelis, led to such frustration amongst the people that what happens? Well, you get riots, protests, and terror attacks. And that eventually forced Israel into the Oslo Accords, which again reiterated the two-state solution. Okay, you get 97% of this Palestinian land, we'll compensate you for the other 3%. And essentially, this is how you get Gaza and the West Bank again. And you get these sort of periods of peace. I wonder if we have to go through another one of those phases where Israel comes in, emergency powers of control, then you get essentially riots and frustration, and at some point you need another peace accord, which hopefully can last for a long period of time. But I don't know that there's a way you can solve this problem permanently And I also don't know that there's a way you could solve this problem without a two-state solution. There's no two-state solution. Where do you send all the Palestinians? Or the Israelis? Obviously, in this case, I would say it's probably the Palestinians who are getting evicted. So is it fair for them to lose their half of rights to, or negotiated rights to Jerusalem, the holy base, and whatever? Of course, Israelis claim that's their land, and vice versa, right? So somebody loses here. The most amicable solution seems like it should be a two-state solution. And frankly, I think in the longer term, the way to extend how long that two-state solution lasts, because at some point it'll collapse again, it seems to be cyclical, probably something like North and South Korea, where you just have this giant demilitarized zone, really large buffer, which they've now instituted a larger buffer zone around Gaza, for example. But it should have been like that a long time ago. And you almost need that separation on both sides. And that way you can sort of at least prevent a land-based attack like what you had on October 7th. Because really all that did was ignite the fire that was already there. Thousands of years of tension, a lot of it religious.
Yeah. I don't know where they would go. It's also like having these walls, these borders in between Gaza and Israel. Well, the problem is Egypt's not necessarily fond of, well, historically either, but specifically the Palestinians. So the Palestinians they've got the sea, I guess, but realistically they have no escape from their own little island. So to speak.
Gaza has almost become this like peninsula, so to speak, where you're trapped because you can't go into Egypt. You've got Israel surrounding you on the other side, and you've got the sea, so you're stuck. Where do you go? Do you go into the West Bank? Well, that's already populated, and how do you get there?
How do you get there?
Crossing Israel? I mean, I guess you could make a corridor, but is it then fair to give up your homeland in Gaza? It's such a problematic issue, and I think what it really requires is a lot of Western leadership, because really we funded the Israeli defense, quote unquote, the Israeli response, incursion, whatever you want to call it. That's U.S. funded, which gives the U.S. a lot of leverage because the U.S. has the power to sort of limit shipments going a little slower, however you want to play it. Play the politics game, blame politics, whatever, to slow funding for Israel. Those are all negotiation levers that the Biden administration could use. The question is, what will our leadership actually push for? It seems like, based on the latest here, that they're pushing for a ceasefire and two-state solution, mostly because what else do you do? Then again, will Biden and his team be strong enough to negotiate a solution? What do you think?
That's a tough one. The speculation right now is with Ramadan coming up on March, was it 10th or 11th? With Ramadan coming up, the expectation is for some sort of deal to be brokered by then. It looks like March 10th. Mm-hmm. And so we hope so. And there was a quote from Biden on Monday the 26th. He said, well, I hope by the beginning of the weekend, the end of the weekend, my national security advisor tells me that we're close. We're not done yet. My hope is next Monday we'll have a ceasefire. With that said, both Israel and Palestine were like, what?
We haven't heard about this.
Yeah.
What? Oh, no.
Hamas said this was extremely optimistic and prematurely so. Israel was kind of like, we're not really budging. Like, they got to follow through with their end of the deal. And so
it's a lot of negotiating nonsense, too. They've got to politically posture like, no, we're still so far away on our demands. They've got to publicly posture like that, even if they are getting closer. That makes negotiating so hard when you have the political aspect of it, too. Maybe they can get Gavin Newsom in there to help negotiate. Oh, wait, he's getting recalled again.
Is he?
Maybe. They're trying to. They're circulating a petition again. 2024 recall?
If you don't run, I will.
Anybody but Newsom.
That's the campaign.
Oh.
There's also the Human Rights Watch had said that Israel hasn't been following its orders from the United Nations to keep their war in moderation, so to speak, to watch out for, like humanitarian atrocities, to not genocide an entire population of people.
Right.
But Israel's response is like, hey, we are just defending ourselves. This is purely self-defense, and we have a right to this. So I don't know. People around the world have different opinions on that.
Well, I think the big thing that frustrates folks is that you've got, somewhere around 8,000 Palestinians who've died so far out of this conflict, and 1,400 Israelis. Every life is important, but the sheer magnitude here of this difference, I think, is what frustrates so many people around the world. I mean, for basically every Israeli who's died, about 20 Palestinians have died, and half of those are probably children. I mean, it's just terrible, absolutely terrible to think of. So the fact that this was enabled, the biggest frustration I have is that this was enabled to happen, which is a combination of the failure of the Palestinian Authority, but also a substantial failure of the Israeli Defense Forces, the IDF, to actually secure their border and maintain a proper military presence on that October 7th day. Obviously, it's easy to Monday morning quarterback, but those two failures combined enabled now 20 Palestinians, half of them being children, to die for every Israeli death at now 1450. It's sad.
It's an absolutely lopsided war, that's for sure. Regardless of who started it, the odds are very, very skewed for how this ends.
It's so sad.
And then, like I'd mentioned, people around the world have different opinion. There was I think over the weekend, an active duty U.S. airman who basically self-immolated in front of Washington, D.C., in front of the Israeli embassy there.
Yeah, that was sad. I mean, really, this person was 25 years old. I mean, even if you're so passionate about political messaging, are you really winning by just ending your own life to try to make a statement? Nothing's going to change. That's not the way to make, in my opinion, any change happen. I mean, people might talk about it for a day or two, but I don't know. I think that's the wrong way about it. Active duty. I mean, there must have been some form of mental health issue there for somebody to light themselves on fire to scream "Free Palestine" until they collapsed in their death, essentially. Well, I don't know. What am I missing there? What do you think?
Yeah, historically, it's been a very powerful way to make a statement. I mean, it's kind of the ultimate sacrifice. But the problem, I think, these days is people are so numb to all kinds of news and all kinds of information and some really, really crazy things that, yeah, people are going to be talking about it for a few days, maybe even the whole week, and then we kind of move on to the next thing.
Yeah, and it is interesting. I mean, he did try to amplify his protest by streaming it on Twitch. I guess he was a cyber defense operations specialist, so it is confirmed that he was actually an active duty Air Force member. And I don't know. To me, it just feels like such a permanent way to make a statement that I think there are better ways than killing yourself to make that statement, or at least to try to contribute, even if that's from making videos on social media to add commentary or whatever, which clearly he's aware of being able to live stream. I mean, he did so right before his tragic death. But it also makes me wonder how much mental health support are service members actually getting, with the stuff that they're having to see. Who knows? When you get drone operators that see just the nasty death that occurs, who are surveilling with our drones. I mean, we just lost 2 Predator drones over the last couple of weeks from, I think, Hamas and, some folks from Yemen shooting our drones down. But these folks, I mean, they see horrible atrocities. So I wonder how much of a mental health issue this person was facing, and that's why he felt compelled to go to this extreme. It's really sad.
And these are just kids, man. I mean, this guy was 25, but a lot of these people enlisted are 18, 19, 20 years old, definitely younger than us, and it's just kind of sad they're not getting the basic mental support that they need, even though they're being exposed to such traumatic things on a day-to-day.
Yeah, and he compared this to, what would I do if I was alive during slavery? What would I do if my country was committing genocide? What is killing yourself that answer? I don't think so. I'd much rather see the approach of what our country actually did. I mean, we fought a war, essentially a civil war over slavery, and I feel like fighting for what you believe in is a lot more functional than this. But again, it gets people thinking about it. If anything, hopefully, what comes out of this is people getting help for mental health in the military, because I bet you there are other people who feel just like this.
Sad.
Well, that's what we got on Israel. Make sure to subscribe. Check out eHack.com for more. We'll see you in the next one.